But thank you all for being here on this cold Wednesday night. I think I saw Jim. Is Brian here yet?
I don't see Brian yet.
Okay, we'll give Brian a minute to join us, and then we'll get our meeting started here in about a minute or so. Is Laura Norton here?
Yes, I am. Here I am.
Okay, great. Scott Custer, are you here with us?
I sure am. Hello.
Okay, fantastic. And then Ron Cucci, did I see you?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. How about Kyle Mays? Have you joined us? Kyle, you here?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Here.
Great. Okay, I think we're all here then. Is anybody else aware of someone we're missing that we need to wait for? Okay, Brian, are you with us?
This is Brian. Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, sir. You as well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Well, so it's just a little after 6 on Wednesday, January 13th. So I'll go ahead and call our Woodlands Water Agency Board of Trustees meeting to order. And I think we'll start. Brian, would you like to go through the protocol for the meeting for us?
Yes, sir. This is Brian Yates with SPH. Welcome, everybody, as Eric said, to the Woodlands Water Board of Trustees meeting for Wednesday, January the 13th, 2021. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the procedures for our remote meeting, and then we'll perform a roll call for the folks who are in the meeting today. I know we do have quite a few folks on. When I logged in, I think it said there were over 30. So it may take a few minutes to go through that process. So to begin with, on the meeting protocol, I need to remind everyone the meeting is being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this evening so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name or your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, or trustees, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with our Board of Trustees, Eric Hurd.
Present.
Ron Wilson.
Here.
Kyle Mays.
Here.
Paul Martin.
Present.
Hartley McIntosh.
Present.
Ron Cucci.
Present.
Jan Price.
Present.
Scott Custer.
Present.
Laura Norton,
I'm here.
Bob Lux.
Present.
Okay, that completes our roll call for our trustees this evening. We'll move on to Woodlands Water staff. Jim Stinson. Jim, are you on the line?
He's waving. Yes.
Mike Mooney,
I'm here.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy,
Here.
Maureen Bourgeois,
Here.
Jeannie Scott.
I'm here.
Any other members of Woodlands Water in the meeting that I've not called? Okay, we'll move on to San Jacinto River Authority staff. Ron Kelly,
Present.
Chris Meeks,
Present.
Matt Corley,
Present.
Matt Volna, okay, any other members of the River Authority present in the meeting? Chris, Brian, I'm not hearing anybody else from the River Authority. Do we not have anyone else this evening?
No, sir, it does not appear so, but Matt Volna is.
Matt Vona is.
Sorry,
Okay.
I said present, but apparently didn't say anything.
Okay, yeah, I hear you now. Okay, well, if that's it for the River Authority, then we'll move on to consultants. Do we have any Woodlands Water consultants in the meeting this evening?
John Knox, Fox and Company.
Okay, anyone besides John? All right, well, that will complete the roll call for consultants. We'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting? If
Yes.
so, we need to identify you for the record. And if you could just one at a time, state your name for our minute. And if you have a unique spelling on your last name, please spell that for the secretary.
Yeah, this is Paul Brown. No E.
My name is
Mark
Gary
Unlin.
Miller.
Who else?
This is Tim Hartzell, Hartzell.
Arthur Bredehoff.
Neil Gaynor.
This is Lance McLeod, Kimley Horn, last name spelled McLeod.
Mark Crabb, CRABBE.
All right,
Doc-
any other members of the public?
Yes, Dr. Shelley Sakula Gibbs.
Stephanie Zertuche.
Todd Stevens, last name Stephens.
This is Brian. Do we have any other members of the public? All right, that will complete our roll call. I'll go ahead and hand it back over to our trustee chairman, president, to begin the meeting. Eric.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'd like to go ahead and I think we'll pass on the pledges. It's kind of hard to do over Zoom. If you will, though, join me in an invocation, which I'll give right now. Dear Lord, we come to you this evening. We thank you for this wonderful community we get to live in. We thank you for this time of peace and prosperity that we've been able to enjoy. And we thank you for our opportunity to serve. We ask that you forgive us all our trespasses and continue to bless our families and our community. Please give us wisdom and discernment and power through your Holy Spirit. Help us to hear one another, make good decisions for our community. Please continue to prosper our community and our nation. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Okay. Thank you very much. That'll take us to item 3 on the agenda, receive comments from the public. We've got a lot of folks here. I don't know how many want to comment. Try to keep it to about 3 minutes or so. That's the rule. If you need more, just let me know. Do we have anyone that wants to make a comment?
Yeah, this is Paul Brown.
All right, Paul, go right ahead, sir.
Good evening to everybody. I spent some time thinking since the last meeting, and frankly, Woodlands Water's principal role for the community, I think, is getting water to homes and businesses and getting sewage removed. And that takes infrastructure. The Woodlands is about 50 years old, and it's critical, I believe, to take action in our current interest rate environment to quickly move ahead on infrastructure replacement, which obviously over time lowers the cost to our residents. And I urge this board and all the boards to do so. I have a second comment I'd like to make. Before the November election, Gordy Bunch announced the Woodlands Township would be moving ahead with incorporation into a city and would be including Woodlands Water and the MUDs in this incorporation, which was a change in the positioning of Woodlands Township from when they did their studies. As elected officials serving the community, it seems part of our fiduciary duty is to judge the plan proposed by the township and articulate a position on the plan. To that end, it seems prudent that Woodlands Water hire a qualified consulting company to examine the township's proposal in all its dimensions so we can inform our residents of the pros and cons of incorporating Woodlands Water and our MUDs into the city of the Woodlands. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Do we have any other comments from the public?
This is Mark Unland.
Who was this? Mark who?
Mark Unland.
Mark Unland. Go right ahead, Mark.
Okay, thank you. My comments have to do with the wastewater treatment plant consolidation study. First, I want to applaud the board for taking a step last month to take a step back and get more information before committing to a high cost study at this point for consolidation. I mean, the Woodlands has 3 wastewater treatment plants, and that's the way it's always been. And now y'all are changing that concept to think about a consolidation. Rather than going full bore into this study, I hope you'll take a more thoughtful, kind of careful approach. Like any other business decision, you would clearly describe what is the problem that you're trying to solve. And then you would try to brainstorm the solutions that address the problem. And then evaluate and compare those alternatives on some sort of transparent criteria that everyone can agree on. And then just select the one that addresses the problem and meets all that criteria. Now, maybe you've already done all this, but all I can see is that you've selected a solution and then you're marching off into implementation mode. Now, I didn't see any comparison of alternatives. And some of the alternatives you should consider is first, do nothing. Just continue to use the original design, maintain them, which I think many, if not almost universally, cities and townships and communities do every year. They don't change the infrastructure, they use it, especially if it's a well-designed and well-operated and well-thought-out plan. But if you want to think about consolidation, then I think to be honest to yourself and to be honest to the community, you need to think about consolidating at any one of the 3 locations. Yes, think about consolidating at 2, but also think about consolidating at 1 or consolidate at 3. You need to look at those and say, which is the best alternative for consolidating? In addition to those, you should think about consolidating at a new location. And all of these would involve land purchases and, infrastructure, like the previous caller said. But only then you could look at it and say, look, we looked at all these options, and because of this criteria that we've decided to apply, this is a selected option, and then you can go forward. There's no point in spending a lot of money until you have compared the alternatives.
All right.
You don't want to spend a lot of money and then realize you should have been looking at something else.
I appreciate, I think we're at the
Thank
end
you.
of 3 minutes. Do you need any more time or are you good?
No, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your well thought out comments. All right, do we have anyone else? So, Tim, you have your hand raised. Tim, why don't you go ahead? Tim?
Thank you. Tim Hartzell. Just wanted to make quick comments. I, like probably a lot of you, moved here late 80s, early 90s. Always had hoped that we would pay off our debt before any new debt comes on. It never seems to happen, especially with municipalities. There's always another project, et cetera. From a homeowner's residence, well, the layers of debt that just continue to increase on us become onerous. And what happens is then you're under the weight of all this debt. So I guess I would just want to always express my concern. As we're maturing, we should have been paying off our debt. And if we're going to be taking on new debt, I have a concern on that. Having said that, I believe it was Paul Brown's comment with, I'm very active in the municipal bond market. I'm on the buy side, not the origination, underwriting, or sell side. So I see a whole host of ways things are structured. And I would encourage the committee to really endorse checking 3 or 4 underwriters on what we should be doing, because you have multiple items coming in. And if we are going into the city, do we want debt levels that match our peers? If you need help, I'd be more than happy to share with you some of the war stories on the buy side that I see on municipal bonds that I do buy for client accounts. And then my last point, to be brief, is I too am very concerned on what I'm reading about in the paper, and that's the limit that I have in knowledge on the movement of water treatment plants. I realize in the Woodlands we're having a lot of growing pains, and moving infrastructure around is very costly and not necessarily very prudent. But I do realize you run into developers who maybe have an interest of expanding something or moving something just for development reasons. You never know those until after the fact, but for a lot of infrastructure for municipalities, they're put in place and then we build around them. So my concern is we're going to just move the couch from the living room to the den and incur a bunch of costs. So thank you for my time.
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments, Tim. All right, do we have any other comments from someone else from the public?
Yes,
Yes,
President.
this is Mark.
Oh.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Crabb. This is Dr. Shelley Sekula Gibbs. I serve on the Woodlands Township. I can open this up. I serve on the Woodlands Township Board. I represent you on the Woodlands Township Board, and I also have recently been appointed to the One Water Task Force. And in regards to that appointment, I have had the privilege of talking with the San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group and asking them to seriously work towards putting a voting member from Montgomery County and particularly South County onto their newly assembled planning group. So they met in executive session last Friday and are taking into strong consideration bringing in another member to their board. They have 12 on their board now, and adding another member in the category of water district. Now we have, as One Water, through a letter that was offered by Chairman Bruce Reeser, we offered the name of one of your members, Neil Gaynor, who's a MUD director from 6, and an alternate, Laura Norton. Now, they were receptive to that and considered the options of where to put such a Montgomery County candidate, and came up with the idea of adding a member to the water district category. So that is moving forward to be considered, in addition to 2 other members that they're considering adding, one from the public and one from in a new category called the coastal communities, which they're leaning towards Galveston, considering taking a member from Galveston to that position. That will move forward quickly, and that's the reason for my presentation to you today, because they will consider this next Thursday at 9 a.m. And because this category is now being designated as a water district, it's very critical that your group, the trustees, led by President Hurd, is well informed about this and hopefully can get behind the nomination of, first of all, the designation of another water district, and the key language of calling this, calling for a representative from Montgomery County to satisfy something in their bylaws, the flood planning group's bylaws, that say that they have to have geographic diversity. And I'm going to switch my video off, but the geographic diversity will then be will then be satisfied, because right now they have no voice or vote from Montgomery County. So they're leaning, I think, if I could speak into the possibilities, they're leaning towards doing this. But if we could get a statement from your group that would be forthcoming, could be verbal, and then later could possibly be written, that would be excellent to push them in the direction of accepting a voting member from Montgomery County. And the preliminary would be to add that category of another water district. So that's, I know that Mr. Stinson will be talking about this. And again, I thank you for the chance to brief you on it, and to ask for your support, and let you know that One Water is keen on this. And just in conclusion, there is a chance to have an alternate as well. And the name that we put up was Laura Norton. Miss Norton has since then decided that it would be best from personal reasons to withdraw her name from that consideration. And then to my understanding, Ms. Zertucci, who is also one of your MUD directors, is considering taking that option. Now, we can't designate that Neil Gaynor would definitely be able to choose such an alternate, but that possibility exists. So I'm bringing that up as well. And I just thank Ms. Zertucci, if that's indeed what she decides to do, for considering this responsibility. So I'm staying on for questions if you should have any questions. But again, thanks very much, and for helping us get some geographic diversity and a voice for Montgomery County on the San Jacinto Regional Flood Planning Group.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Sally. I talked with Jim about that. I think we are going to talk about that a little more later this evening. Thanks for your efforts very much.
Pleasure.
Okay, any other comments from the public?
Thank you to Shelley Sekula Gibbs and to Todd Stevens. They've done a lot of work on keeping this moving forward and getting someone from Montgomery County on that board. I really appreciate your work. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, any other comments from the public before we get into item 4?
Yes, sir.
Gary, I think I saw you. Gary Miller, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Everyone, my name is Gary Miller. I'm a resident in the Woodlands. I live in Dove Trace subdivision. It's kind of near, it's basically back behind HEB that's at Kirkendall Woodlands Parkway. The issue that we're having is I don't have any homes directly behind my home. There's kind of a green space between me and the HEB shopping center. And recently I think it's a 70-foot monopole has been installed by the water agency. It's a large silver pole with some antenna on top, which I think is related to the AMI ultrasonic water meter project that's ongoing. I don't know when it was actually installed. It was sometime over late December. Kind of the issue that myself and my neighbors have is we were not ever given any kind of notice that this was being built. It's 70 feet in the air, right behind my house. So I've contacted different agencies. I've contacted San Jacinto River Authority. Basically, the bottom line is it's built on San Jacinto River Authority's property, but it's actually been installed by the Woodlands Water Agency. We're just kind of looking for some kind of solution or trying to figure out kind of why we were never included in the process, and what we can kind of do about it moving forward.
Jerry, I appreciate you coming to the meeting. Jim, would you like to get with him, or maybe Mike?
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I spoke with Mr. Miller and through email and phone today, and I'm going to be looking more into this and working with him, and we'll have a report at your next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, another member of the public have any comments? Okay.
I think you've got Mark Crabb is on the line, and I think he would like to make some comments.
Did you have any comments?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Mark Crabb, I'm a longtime resident of the Woodlands. I purchased a home 6 years ago in Lakeside Cove, which is near the wastewater treatment plant number 1. Since I moved in, I've been complaining along with my neighbors about the odor quality, and I think obviously everyone with the San Jacinto River Authority is familiar with it. In my research into this, what I've learned, and I'm glad to be corrected if I'm wrong, but got a plan here that's it's basically the old home that has been left alone and hasn't been reinvested in, and now we're paying the price. We're talking about what has to be done. So when we identify the problem is, to me, that the money wasn't invested over the years, over the decades, as it should have been. I reviewed the records, and it looks like there's maybe 3 upgrades in that 40 plus years, and now we're faced to pay the piper. In my opinion, that facility is failing this community. It's been going on for, I can go back at least 15 years, and I know people beyond that. And I'm just shocked it's been tolerated this long. And I just hope this new plan will address it. I don't have the solution. I don't know what the solution is, but the service they're providing is not commensurate with what the Woodlands residents expect, or I'm sure what the San Jacinto River Authority expects. It's failing the community, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Any other comments? Okay, last call, we're going to move on. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for putting together your comments for the meeting. We've heard you, and we'll see what we can do, okay? All right, let's go on to our consent agenda for our trustees. That's going to be items 4, 5, 6, and 7 on the agenda. So 4 is review and act on the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of December 2020. 5, review and act on the financial reports and disbursements of December 2020. 6, receive and act upon the monthly investment reports and quarterly investment reports for the period of October to December 2020. And 7, receive regularly monthly SGR Woodlands Division report. So on item 4, do we have any comments or corrections?
This is Trustee McIntosh. On that, I would refer to item 10, where Trustee McIntosh made a motion to defer. The motion was to table, and a motion to table is non-amendable and is non-debatable. And while we've always tried to ignore Robert's rules when necessary to get things moving, I think that the general follow-on to my motion was that the people would like more information. And in that regard, if we amend the minutes to show that it's a motion to table, we would have to change item
on the agenda number 9 to delete act on, and number 10 to replace ratify with consider. And I think this was brought to the attention of the Woodlands Water at the Mud 1 meeting, and I think at other meetings as well. And I don't know how it was retained in the minutes when we got them, but the motion was clearly to table.
And which item was that, Hartley?
And I want it changed to so read.
Hey, Hartley, this is Eric. Which item on the minutes are you referring to again, please?
Item 10.
Item 10, ratify.
Third paragraph.
Yeah. Trustee McIntosh made a motion to defer this item until more information.
No, yeah, but I made a motion to table.
Okay.
And it was seconded, and the second clearly understood it to be table. And to table a motion only takes a majority.
Okay, so Hartley is...
it is not amendable.
Yeah, Hartley...
Okay, it is not debatable. It is not amendable.
So Shelley, make a note of that, and we'll vote on it in a second. Does anyone else have any revisions to the Board of Trustee meeting minutes from last meeting? Okay. Item 5, do we have any revisions or...
Well, I think Trustee Custer's comment is not allowed. That should be stricken. But in order to move forward, I am in concurrence with what he was trying to do, which said, let's take a look at this before we take any further action. And that would mean agenda item 9, we have to strike act on, and agenda item 10, we have to replace ratify to consider. So
Hartley, I'm just going to disagree with you. We've got an agenda that's been published for the statutory period of time. We are having a public meeting to discuss it, and what we're talking about right now is...
Well, okay, an agenda item to table, no, a motion to table is not debatable. It is not amendable, and it was made and seconded and approved, and I didn't want to disrupt the last meeting by saying there are no comments, but Trustee Martin and Trustee Custer had comments that I'm in favor of. It's just that
yeah, but the problem you have...
The motion has to be brought off the table.
You let it be discussed and voted on.
And that would be to take up a matter previously tabled. You have to have a formal motion to move to take it off the table.
Was it not carried unanimously? Was Trustee Custer's motion not carried unanimously?
It carried unanimously. It only had to be a majority.
That's it. That's it. If you'd like for us to consider your revision to the minutes, we'll do that. But it's not going to change the agenda tonight.
Well, it has to change the agenda.
Nope.
It has to change the agenda. Okay. We'll have a legal... I don't want to give a parliamentary discussion on this. We'll have the attorney advise us.
Right now? We're going to move
right
on
now.
To item...
Right now.
No, right now, I'm going to have the board look
the attorney advises if it's appropriate to have agenda items that act on something that has been tabled and has not been brought off the table. You can't have something that's not on the table acted upon.
Hartley, I'm running the meeting. You have a vote on agenda items. You're not running the meeting.
Well, let's have the attorney respond to this. In other words, you're not following Robert's rules. That's what you're saying.
Hartley.
And by the way, this was brought to the attention of the WW agency at the MUD meeting. And I was astounded to see that the minutes had not been changed because the recording is available to the secretary.
So Hartley, if I have Brian give us his opinion on that, can we move on to number 5 in your opinion?
Yes, yes.
Okay, Brian, just so that we can move the meeting forward, would you like to opine for us on this issue?
This is Brian. So, from last month, and I haven't gone back and listened to the recording, but was in the meeting, was that we did have the motion to table, but then Trustee Custer did ask for the amendment, and that was not objected to regarding the additional directive not to spend any additional funds. And that was, as amended, my recollection was that motion to table with the additional directive was what was voted on by the trustees at last month's meeting. As to the meeting today, it's, as far as a point of order, I mean, we can go through a 2-step process as opposed to a 1-step process. I'm not going to presume what, if any, action the board would consider under item number 9. But I think, if we want to be very formal from Robert's Rule of Order, and to be clear, we're not legally bound by those Robert's Rules of Order, but they are best practice, then, we would, under 9, before we would consider any action, there would have to be a motion to remove, to bring the item back before the board as opposed to leaving it just going ahead and taking action. You would have to consider a motion to, basically untable the item, for lack of a better term.
Really, though, what you're saying is on item 9, we just consider information. We don't really have to act on anything tonight, right?
Well, you would have to act to take the item, to reconsider the item before you could consider it. Because what Hartley, I think, Hartley, and feel free to add additional comments to what I'm saying, but I think what you're saying is because it was a motion to table, you would like a 2-step process before there's actually action. One is to bring the item back before the board to essentially untable it, and then once that's been done, then consider action. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the feeling that I got from the last meeting was everyone wanted more information, and we didn't want to have to act on it until we had that information and had an ability to examine it and study it.
Yep.
And that's why we tabled it. And I had no objection to the follow-on amendment to my motion, even though formally by Robert's rules, a motion to table is not debatable and is not amendable, but we allowed debate. And that's when Trustee Martin made comments, and that's when Trustee Custer made an amendment, and I didn't object to either one of those things.
Okay, gentlemen. So then what I'd like to do is, instead of doing a consent agenda, we'll just do each of these items separately. And Hartley, you have requested a revision to the minutes very clearly. If we approve the minutes as amended by you, then that's it, right? So should we?
Well, then we go forward, and 9 has to be changed, and 10 has to be changed.
You're right. Yes, correct. Shall we do?
Okay, that's what I tried to point out.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, I'm going to ask, do any of the other trustees have any comments or revisions to item 4, the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting from the last meeting? Okay, there being no further comments, I'm going to go ahead and call a vote on our approval of the minutes as amended or revised by Hartley. And state your revision again, Hartley.
Well, instead of the motion to defer was a motion to the table.
On item number
10.
10.
10.
Very good. So I'm going to go ahead and call the vote now.
May I just have a question on this issue, if I may, Eric?
Quick question, Scott.
Custer. Are there any other recollections of anybody? Did anybody review the video?
That's why I asked everybody if anyone else had any comments.
Forgive me.
I was the second on the table. I do remember it as a table. That's all I would comment.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to vote in favor of approving the minutes as amended or revised by Hartley. I'm now going to call up everyone else's vote. Ron Wilson, how do you vote?
In favor, aye.
Kyle Mays?
Aye.
Paul Martin?
Aye.
Hartley McIntosh?
Aye.
Ron Cucci?
Aye.
Jan Price?
Aye.
Scott Custer?
Aye.
Laura Norton?
Aye.
Bob Lux?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. All right, so we've now approved the minutes from the last meeting revised by Hartley and us unanimously, which means on item number 9, we can consider
Strike act on.
and we strike act on. And then on item number 10 tonight, we don't ratify, but we consider.
Consider, yes.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to item 5 on the agenda. Review and act on the financial reports and disbursements of December 2020. Does anybody have any revisions or questions on the reports? Okay, there being none, I'm going to go ahead and call a vote. I vote in favor. Ron Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kyle Mays?
Aye.
Paul Martin?
Aye.
Hartley McIntosh?
Aye.
Ron Cucci?
Aye.
Jan Price?
Aye.
Scott Custer?
Aye.
Laura Norton?
Aye.
And Bob Lux?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, we'll move on to item 6. Receive and act on the monthly investment and quarterly investment reports for the period of October to December 2020. We have any discussion, questions, revisions?
Trustee McIntosh, I move that be approved by unanimous consent.
Okay. I vote in favor.
Needs a second. Needs a second.
Second.
All right, Laura, did you second?
Yes, I did.
All right. I vote in favor. Ron Wilson, how do you vote?
Oh, no, unanimous consent. The chair says, is there any objection? If there's an objection,
Hartley,
we have to go through a roll call. If there's not an objection,
I'd like to be
it is,
present.
it is approved.
Willing to let you run the whole meeting. This is
No, I'm just trying to tell you
vote, Hartley.
what the procedure is
Let me take the
for
vote.
unanimous consent.
Hartley? Are you done?
A motion for unanimous consent was made and seconded. The chair's response to that should be, are there any objections? If none, it is passed.
So in the time
If there's an objection, we go back and do a roll call.
we could have voted. I'm going to do it how I'm going to do it. Okay? Ron, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kyle Mays?
Aye.
Paul Martin?
Aye.
Hartley McIntosh?
Aye.
Ron Cucci?
Aye.
Jan Price?
Aye.
Scott Custer?
Aye.
Laura Norton?
Aye.
Bob Lux?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 7, receive the regular monthly SGI Woodlands Division report.
Mr. Hurd, I just have
Questions?
It's Trustee Martin. I have a question for San Jacinto River Authority on page 24. The item
6.0 recent incidents and the failures of 2 PVC lines. I'd like to have some discussion and if any further findings have been made and what corrective action, if any, is being proposed.
Yes, sir. This is Chris Meeks. Would you like me to cover both of those items or just one in particular you would like information on?
I have questions about 2 failures well within the life expectancy of those items. So I'll leave it to the chair to make the motion on that, but maybe one answer is good for both. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we just need to talk about it, Chris.
Okay, sure thing. Well, what you'll see is on the left-hand side, you'll see a 16-inch water main break, a PVC water main break that occurred basically a few days before Christmas. When we dug that pipe up to identify, and we back up a little bit, that the break location was roughly 2978 and Woodlands Parkway. In front of that little Memorial Hermann emergency care, urgent care facility. When we dug up the water line and pulled the pipe out to take a look at it, from the break, what it appears is that the bedding, which is basically the sand that the pipe usually sits on, the bedding was not actually proper for construction methods. And so over time, that pipe was allowed to move and flex a little bit more than it should have. And so that's what we are looking at that caused the break. What we're calling that is basically a lack of bedding. There was not enough material underneath it to stabilize as the ground just shifts naturally. To note on that line roughly runs from Lake Woodlands and Woodlands Parkway to 2978. And we've had a series of breaks, roughly 2 to 3 breaks on that PVC line each year for the last 5-6 years or so. The other failure that you see there is going to be a 16-inch PVC force main, which would actually carry sewer instead of potable water. That one's kind of hard to, it was next to a ditch, roughly Lake Woodlands and I want to say of Sterling Ridge was roughly the rough intersection of that pipe failure. But if you look at the pipe, the picture that's on page 24, the right picture, you'll see a crack that kind of runs along with the pipe. When we dug that one up and pulled the pipe out, saw that crack that basically starts at, you can see that little flared portion of the pipe, that's called the bell. And so what you have is you have one piece of pipe that doesn't have that bell as non-flared, then you have another piece of pipe that's flared, which has the bell, and they're inserted into each other. Sometimes what happens and what appears to happen in this case is that the pipe without the bell was pushed too far inside the pipe with the bell. And that's just generally how they're connected. And that's what's called overbelling. And what happens is over time, that pipe that's been inserted too far into breaks like what you see. You'll see the pipe usually, or the crack usually run through the bell and down the pipe. And so in some cases, when we look at a pipe, it's just service life, but Mr. Martin is correct. When you see a PVC pipe that fails after roughly 20 years of service, you kind of got to question why. And so for the first one, what we're looking at is a lack of bedding. And on the second one, what we're looking at is a potential overbelling of that pipe. So both of those items were fixed. The PVC water main was repaired. I think it took roughly about 12 hours to fix, but we did stay on site and fix it because there were some entities out without water. The force main, we were in this unique circumstance. We were lucky that there's 2 lift stations on site. So we were able to shut down that one force main, transfer it to the other lift station that's on site, and then repaired it on the day after Christmas. So, does that answer your questions?
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions for Chris on the report?
If I could follow, this is Trustee Custer. I could follow up to where I think Trustee Martin was going. You've identified these issues. Do we have some confidence, or do we have, is it in best known installation methods today that you believe these issues no longer occur? Is it outside of if policy changed as a result of these findings? Just human error at the time?
So I can tell you what I guess, let's say, at this point in time, the overbilling normally it's not it's a construction practice in both of them. It's either trying to get the job done too quick or trying to cut some cost and not put enough sand in the bottom of it on the lack of bedding side. The overbilling, from looking at the pipe, the additional pipe that we dug up in the area and just took a look at it, it looked like it was okay, no guarantee. It is also the first time we've had an issue on that pipe since it has been installed. Sometimes you just have one little issue like that, and you don't have any other ones. On the PVC water main, I fully expect that is going to have additional concerns, because that pipe running from Lake Woodlands to 2978, and we're currently preparing a map just for our internal purposes, and I'll be glad to share it with Jim, that shows the breaks along that line, because this is one of those things when you have an asset that you expect to last 50, 75, 100 years, and you're having continuous breaks within 20 years. And that, in fact, 10 years ago, it was breaking as well. I have no confidence that that line is not going to, it's going to break again at some point. And so that's one thing we're looking at internally to see if there is anything that we can do over that entire stretch of pipe, which is highly doubtful since it is a construction method. The pipe would likely have to be replaced at some point in time. There's no quick fix in this case, especially since it is so long.
And Trustee Custer, one more to just follow up to that. Can you please repeat your data on the number of breaks we've had over the 5 to 6 years on that pipe? You said per year, but I can't remember how many you said.
It's roughly 2 to 3 per year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any discussion on the report?
I have one other item, if it's okay. Just a quick update on the Tin Man. Just briefly on the Tin Man, want to let you know the Tin Man is currently slated to go to the River Authority Board on January 28th. So we will be asking for approval for the final design as authorized by the trustees a couple of months ago on that item. Did want to give you an update and let you know at the time when we estimated the cost of the Tin Man, it was $130,000 for the final design. As we're sitting today and what we propose to take to the board on January 28th, it is $197,000. The difference between the original estimate and then the cost that we're taking to our board is the addition of a fan test. This fan test was not originally included when we did the estimate, but after talking to Kimberly Horn about the fan test and how to make sure what's installed does actually pull the proper volume, they did recommend this fan test. So what this fan test is going to do, just briefly, is it's going to put a fan on top, or a few different fans actually, on top of the manhole where the Tin Man previously was, and pull different volumes of air out of the collection system. The attempt is to make sure that they identify the proper amount of air that needs to be pulled out of the collection system. That way we actually do not under-design or over-design the actual Tin Man. And that's been the biggest change, but we do plan to take it to the board January 28th, and just wanted to provide you all a quick update.
All right, thank you, Chris. Any other questions for Chris? All right, there being none, there's no action on this item, so we don't need to vote. All right, item 8, review and consider approval of district's fiscal year 2019-2020 draft audit report.
John Knox with Knox Cox and Company. Jennifer Winecki with our firm met with the audit committee, trustees Wilson, Mays, and Martin this afternoon. There were some cosmetic changes noted during the audit committee. I'm not aware of any major modifications other than just cosmetic errors mostly. And so I'm hoping today to get, I guess, a recommendation from one of the audit committee members for approval of the audit for the fiscal year ended 2020.
Okay, any questions?
Okay, this is Ron Wilson. The audit committee has recommended approval of the audit report.
Okay, thank you very much. So there being a recommendation from the committee, we don't need a second. So I, Eric Hurd, will vote in favor of approving the audit report. Ron Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Cal Mays,
Aye.
Paul Martin,
Aye.
Bartley McIntosh,
Aye.
Ron Cucci,
Aye.
Jan Price,
Aye.
Scott Custer,
Aye.
Laura Norton, Bob Lux.
Aye.
All right, approved unanimously. Let's go on to item number 9. Consider information from SGRA Woodlands Division and the Woodlands Water Finance Budget Audit Committee regarding centralized wastewater treatment.
Good evening again. This is Chris Meeks. On this item, we did meet the River Authority, Woodlands Water, and the Audit Committee met on this previous Monday. We reviewed some information, but the Audit Committee has asked for additional information as well as some more clarifying information. So we're currently gathering that internally, and we plan to present next month at the trustees meeting.
Okay, so we'll roll then consider information from SGRA Woodlands Division and Woodlands Water Finance Budget Audit Committee regarding centralized wastewater treatment to next month's meeting. We'll just be considering the information. Okay. Item number 10. Consider the finance budget audit recommendation for SGRA to move forward with the feasibility study to expand, upgrade, modernize Plant 2 on Research Forest Drays, Drive, and phase out plants 1 and 2. Same thing?
Move it forward, yeah.
All right, so we're just gonna roll that same agenda item, not ratified, but consider. We're gonna roll that to the next meeting, okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Item number 11, present the 6th and final accounting recap.
And I'd just like to emphasize before we get started with this, this is just a recap. The numbers, the single family dwelling unit equivalents that are provided in this are the same numbers that were approved in the 6th and final accounting. But we thought it would be helpful to recap where we are and the path forward for the directors, the new directors especially, and the others as well. So with that introduction, Matt, you want to take it?
This item will be for me. I'll be presenting. Maureen, if you can allow me to share my screen, please. And like Jim said, this information will also be presented next week to each of the MUD districts. It's just a recap of running through what the 6th and final was. It's roughly a 5-10-minute presentation or so. So without further ado, I will run through this. If you can, let me know when you can see my screen.
We can.
Thank you. All right, so brief history of the interim accounting. It's been conducted since 1983, and it provides funding for the future expansions of the water and wastewater systems. So what we do is we look at the existing and the projected capacity needs of each of the MUDs, and we look at all the water facilities, wastewater facilities, pumps, motors, valves, all those different type of things, determine the cost of capacity per standard unit. The standard unit that we use is a single family dwelling unit equivalent. And of course, the MUDs contribute funds based on the total projected SFUEs. And so basically what this means is for any MUD that's expanding, we see what is expanding, how big, how far, compare it all to a single home, roughly, I think it's a 2,000 square foot home or so, for it, to make a standard across the board. And then we see what capacity is needed at the plants and the pipes, so on and so forth. And then the individual MUDs contribute funds to fund the expansion of the facilities. Some things that we look at and some impacts that we take into consideration are regulatory impacts. Are there going to be nutrient limits? Is TCQ EPA going to request something additional that has to be put into the plants besides just any development? We do look at any projected development. We also look at customer demand patterns. So we gather all this information together. We work with the Howard Hughes Company. We work with Woodlands Water, work with the MUDs, and we just kind of see where the growth is going to be and what is going to be needed in the future. So kind of recap the purpose of the sixth and final accounting and then the path forward at that time. The top three billboards, if you will, kind of recover what we talked about before. The bottom two are kind of what I wanted to address at this point in time. So on the bottom right, you'll see the Woodlands Water Agency continues to monitor development within each MUD and provides those projections to the River Authority by January 1st of each year. Woodlands Water has been doing that every year since 2017. At first, we met twice a year. Now we've got it refined, so we're down to once a year. From those projections, each MUD will individually address any additional capacity needs going forward. Some things to consider is capacity is built and funded only for potential growth identified in the sixth and final accounting. The reason I'm bringing this up, as well as a recap for the presentation, is there has been some growth over the past year that was not accounted for in the sixth and final accounting. And so we just need to make sure that, especially with some new directors on the board, as well as trustees, just want to make sure everybody understands what the sixth and final was, what capacity was purchased, and then how we're going to have to go proceed going forward. So second bullet is all available capacity has been sold to Woodlands MUDs. We did not overdevelop the wastewater plants, and we don't have 1 million gallons sitting in reservation to kind of sell out whenever we have time. If a large development comes in, or really any development, then there may need to be some expansions, additional work done to sewer pipes, water plants, wastewater facilities, so on and so forth, which is the third bullet. Additional capacity requests may trigger capital projects funded solely by the MUD requiring capacity. Where the sixth and final accounting went into saying, okay, collectively the MUDs will work together to fund large projects, the sixth and final accounting was very clear to say, once all this capacity is sold, anything additional, the MUDs individually have to pay for these items. And so what we're seeing going on around the Woodlands is some redevelopment, multi-family developments as well as vertical development. And I state this because if you have a development where you bring in an apartment complex and you need another 400 SFDUEs, normally that may only cost $400,000 or $500,000 in prime existing capacity. Whereas going forward, if I need to add an aeration basin and a clarifier, it could be millions of dollars for that additional capacity. And just to recap, this is the projected demands and the SFDUEs that were purchased in the sixth and final accounting. So what you'll see is the gallons per day that each of the MUDs had purchased in for the water side on the left, the equivalent SFDUE, then of course the corresponding wastewater SFDUEs in gallons as well. But very quick recap, but do you have any questions I can answer?
I think it's important to emphasize when you say the MUDs would be required to pay for that additional capacity, that it's likely that the MUDs would look to the developer requesting that additional capacity to fund it through them, not requesting funding just from the MUD itself.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you for the clarification, Jim. Any questions or discussions before we move on?
Yeah, Trustee McIntosh.
Go ahead, Harvey.
I think we would like to revise the Con 10 policy to include the cost to the MUD when they approve new developments. In other words, we don't want any surprises for the MUDs when the developer decides to put in a 300-unit apartment complex if the MUD is going to have to pay for all of the upgrade. Can you comment on that, Jim?
I'll be happy to review the existing content agreement and then present it to our legal team for review and discussion back at the MUD meetings, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's not a bad point, Hartley. So Jim, yeah, take a look at that, and then do we need to put that on the agenda next month?
Well, you probably would be for the MUD meetings for sure, but we could review it at the trustee meeting also before the MUD meetings.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, this is Brian. I mean, at this point, we're not talking about too many districts that have projects that will have contents, and to the extent that we do, they're somewhat unique. They're deal by deal based. And so each of those will have in whatever the infrastructure estimates of whatever infrastructure is necessary to support that development, but whether it be internal water, sewer, drainage, whether it be an expansion of a plant or capacity purchase, all that has to be in there, because if the developer doesn't include that, then the developer won't be eligible to receive reimbursement for that in the future. So that has to be addressed as part of the content, and they have to be able to prove up that they will have sufficient value creation on that property post development to be able to support the reimbursement. So those items are taken into account on contents currently. The form itself is very bare bones, and then you have to fill it in with the specifics of each particular deal.
Thank you very much, Brian. All right, any other discussion on item 11? Okay. Thank you again, Chris. Let's move on to item 12, receive update on GMA 14 Joint Planning Committee.
This is Ron Kelly, SRA. Just simply to remind everybody that the next GMA 14 meeting is next Tuesday on the 20th. Let me see. Next Wednesday on the 20th. Sorry. 10 a.m.
All right. Did you have anything that you needed to let us know about, or?
Nope. No. Just to remind y'all of that meeting, and your participation would be greatly appreciated.
And that meeting is going to be on fault activation?
That one of the items is other issues, in which does include fault activation.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, Ron. All right, we're going to move on then to item 13, receive the attorney's report. Brian, do you have anything for us?
This is Brian. Just to let you know, the session did start yesterday. Still unclear as to how hearings will be handled and committee meetings. So they're still working their way through that in light of COVID. So we'll keep the board apprised, the MUD boards and the trustees apprised of updates. But that's all we have for now.
Well, you should let them all know our great success in having our meetings on Zoom.
Duly noted.
Okay, you're not laughing, Brian. That was kind of a joke.
I am laughing.
All right. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Item 14, adoption of resolution adopting list of qualified brokers authorized to engage in investment transitions with district.
Yeah, this is Brian. This is actually something we can probably handle going forward on the consent agenda. Y'all see this every year. I think for the MUD meetings next month, we'll stick this under the consent agenda.
Okay, perfect. Item 15, receive the general manager's report. Jim?
This is
Thank
Brian.
you.
We do need a motion on that resolution for the qualified list. It's the
No.
updated list that's in your packet.
I'm sorry.
Qualified list.
Yeah, we have to take separate action since I didn't put it under the consent agenda for the trustees, but we'll do that.
Sorry, I misunderstood, Brian. Okay, so Laura, were you making a motion?
Move to approve.
Laura, and is there a second?
Bob Lux, I'll second.
Bob, thank you. So we'll go ahead and call a vote. I, Eric Hurd, vote in favor. Ron Wilson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Cal Mays,
Aye.
Paul Martin,
Aye.
Martin McIntosh,
Aye.
Ron Cucci,
Aye.
Dan Price,
Aye.
Scott Custer,
Aye.
Laura Norton.
Aye.
Bob Lux.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all. Motion carries unanimously. Sorry, Brian, I didn't mean to slight you there. All right, item 15, receive the general manager's report. Jim, now you're up.
Thank you, sir. My microphone here at my desktop is not working, so I hope you can hear me okay through the telephone.
Sure can.
What I want to highlight, first of all, is as Dr. Shelley Gibbs and talked about earlier, there has been a concerted effort by the Woodlands Township and Dr. Neil Gaynor and a few others to get an additional voting category membership on the regional flood planning group that the Texas Water Development Board created for the San Jacinto River Authority Basin. You may recall several months ago, we did unanimously support Stephanie Zertucci, MUD 7 director, as an applicant for the Water District, MUD District position. She did not get selected. We were outnumbered by the MUDs in Harris County, Fort Bend County, and others. But through the hard work of Dr. Neal and Dr. Shelley and some others, that group is going to be considering adding an additional Water District membership tomorrow. I think the meeting is tomorrow morning, if I recall correctly. And I would like for the MUDs next week to consider supporting Dr. Neil Gaynor for that position. I have visited with Stephanie. I think we have Stephanie's support. I think it's appropriate to recognize the hard work that Dr. Neil Gaynor and others have put into getting this group to agree to another Water District position. Dr. Gaynor has visited with Stephanie, and certainly I think they plan to work together on technical items that come before that committee. And I think, if I remember correctly from the emails, Laura has withdrawn her position as a possible alternate, and Stephanie has agreed to take that role should we be successful in getting Neil Gaynor appointed to that committee. We're on a very short time fuse. Their next meeting is February the 11th, which is before the trustee meeting. So I'd like to suggest a protocol that we used when we nominated Stephanie, just to present this to each of our MUDs next week as an action item and try to encourage them to unanimously support Dr. Neil Gaynor and allow us to submit a letter recommending him to that board, to that planning committee rather, sometime before their next meeting in February. So with that, and I also had talked to President Hurd earlier. I'd like to make a comment at the meeting tomorrow that the Woodlands Water Agency does support them adopting an additional MUD District voting position, along with a couple of other positions that I think they're going to consider. But it's important for us to support the MUD District position and get representation from Montgomery County. As this played out, we have a representative from the San Jacinto River Authority, Matt Barrett, but no other representation from Montgomery County. And I think that leaves us at a disadvantage going forward as funding and other planning or flooding projects are considered by this group.
Is there any objection from the trustees to Jim attending that meeting and announcing the Woodlands Water general support for the creation of that new position? Is there any objection to that?
No, I think it's a great idea.
Okay. So Jim, you've got no objection from the trustees.
Very good. I appreciate that. And again, with the trustee support, we'll have an action item on your MUD meeting agendas next week to consider nominating or supporting Dr. Neil Gaynor as the primary new Water District rep, with Stephanie as a potential alternate. So that'll be on your agendas. And Ron had some information that he wanted to share with you regarding the legal issues with Conroe and others. So Ron, you want to give us a quick update on that?
Sure, real quickly. If you recall, last month, the Travis County District Court granted our summary judgment against Conroe and others and declared that our GRP contracts were legally and validly executed and that we had the contractual authority under those contracts to issue rate orders and rates. Well, as expected, the city of Conroe has filed an appeal. And actually they want to appeal directly to the Supreme Court. So we're working on that, but they have appealed that ruling. And because they lost, we won, so they're going to appeal. So I just want to let you know on that one. The other one I want to let you be aware of is the Sunset Committee had their hearing today on our final report. They approved it with 2 minor amendments, things that we need to add to our website. And so now that will move forward to writing our sunset bill that basically will make a few changes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have on either one of those 2 subjects.
Laura, did you have a question?
Well, I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of go back on the RFPG thing and ask Dr. Gaynor if he would like to inform the trustee board about what that position and what our agenda really is. Dr. Gaynor?
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I think the issue in front of us is that in the upper San Jacinto watershed, we have most of the main rivers or streams passing right through Montgomery County, with going down to Lake Houston. The only exceptions are Loose Bayou and Cypress Creek in the upper part of the watershed. So therefore, even from a purely logical perspective, having someone, or actually I'd prefer to think of it as a team, myself and Stephanie, to diligently work through these issues and make sure that projects that are identified will not be overlooked by the planning group. After all, water does flow downhill. So it's in the county to the south of us to pay attention to what goes on in Montgomery County and in the upper reaches of the watershed. And indeed, with the report that has recently come out from the San Jacinto Regional Watershed Study, they're pointing to some significant projects in our county and adjacent counties that will have a very positive impact on managing flooding, especially in our area of the Woodlands. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take a lot of effort to get this done. And we know, Stephanie and I are well aware what the challenges are going to be. But anyway, I really appreciate your support. And I also appreciate Dr. Shelley and Todd, Laura for moving this along, Bob Lux for your support too. With that, I think I'm pretty much done. I would invite Stephanie to say a few words.
Hello, yes, I'm excited to continue to have another chance to be a part of this and to support Neil. I think it's a great opportunity for Montgomery County to have representation. So whatever we can do to get in there, I'm behind that.
Very good. Thank you, you guys. This is going to be a lot of effort. I mean, one of the projects that these 2 have taken on, if they should earn this seat, is, well, they've earned it, but if they should be awarded this seat, is to be a liaison to the neighboring watersheds, as well as working on the Regional Flood Planning Group Board. And I'm, of course, appreciative to everyone who's helped move this forward. We've been working on getting on this board for 2 years. It's a lot of work. So thank you, Mr. President, for allowing that pause there.
All right, well, we appreciate everyone's hard work. You know, this is too much for one person to carry on their shoulders. So you got to work as a team. So it's, I see that happening, and then I feel good about that. So thank you all very much. Okay, so
I've got a couple other items.
I'm coming back to you, Tim. I was actually going to. This is still the general manager's report. Do you have anything else? See?
Thank you, sir. last month we talked about forming an ad hoc committee to work with our staff and the San Jacinto River Authority staff on the new directive from the Sunset Commission to engage our residents and our MUD customers more in the River Authority information and decisions and just make them more informed. That committee, through President Eric Hurd's direction, is essentially our Finance and Audit Committee. We had our first meeting on that topic Monday afternoon. We're going to be working with the San Jacinto River Authority's public education and outreach group to try to get more information to our residents about the San Jacinto River Authority wholesale process, their rates. We'll be getting more information out to the public about the budget process that goes through our trustees and through our MUDs. So just look to see a little more information going out, joint information from our group and the San Jacinto River Authority to comply with the Sunset Commission directive. And I had a request for Ron to talk about one of the comments in the Sunset Commission was regarding the San Jacinto River Authority procurement process and selecting contractors and bidding items. And if you would just expand a little bit on what centered that, or what kind of drove those comments from the commission.
Sure, I'd be happy to. There's several items on there. I'll try to make it very quick. One is they pointed out that we rely some on sole sourcing of equipment and procurements. And we do that for, like, if you got 50 flight pumps, you want them all the same. It has consistency in parts and understanding of how to repair that pump. And their position is, no, every time you bid out a pump, you should bid it out. And one time you get an ABC pump, next time you get an XYZ pump, next time you get a JKL pump, that's fine. And so that was one of their comments. One was that a lot of it was documentation, that we evaluate vendors and how they perform in providing goods and services, but they felt that we needed to do more thorough documentation on that evaluation and documenting the vendor performance. They felt that we don't have a formal process for procuring legal services. And we will move forward that on issuing RFQs. And that one was when we have selections like of engineering consultants and contractors, we have a group of 5 people evaluate those proposals, grade them, rate them, get a combined score, and that's how the winner's determined. We have each of our employees fill out conflict of interest forms annually. They want us to actually complete those forms each time we do a procurement process and then post those on the web, which we will continue to do. We don't have a historically underutilized business goal setting plan. We reach out to the historically underutilized businesses, but we don't have basically set asides for particular groups. They have recommended that we do that. And there's some was another item about some technical stuff about training and guide and contracting manuals. Again, it was documentation.
Thank you, Ron. And one other item I wanted to follow up from last month. We talked about a very old case tractor and a jet machine that was on a trailer that I requested the waiver of our surplus equipment disposal policy, and I was granted that, and I told I would report back on the quotes we got. We got 3 quotes, the low being about $1,100 and the high being $1,800. So we're just turning that junk over to H&J Services LLC for $1,800. And that concludes my report.
All right, Jim, thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 16. Receive update on regional subsidence and groundwater research consortium and science advisory committee engagement with HART.
I have a written monthly update from them that I'll be including in the MUD packets. I just got that today.
All right, great. Item 17, receive staff update on matters pertaining to implementation of automated metering infrastructure program.
This is Mike. I can comment on that. Currently, we're working in MUD 67. We're about 25 to 30% completed with that district. We've completed already MUDs 39, 1, and MUD 7, with the exception of a handful of 10 or 12 meters that are going to have to be moved. They're really encumbered by roots and issues, and we need to dig the meters up and move them. But we're 99% done with all of those. To date, we've installed about 8,400 meters, so we're really about 25% completed with the project. Actually going very well. We've changed over a project manager. He started January 4th for the installer group, and seems to be a real go-getter on board and active with any issues that come up in the field. Okay. If you have them.
Thank you very much, Mike.
And just to also reiterate, I will be looking into the concern presented by Gary Miller regarding the monopole and reporting back to the trustees next month.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. I was debating whether I even wanted to take any more time tonight, but since we're talking about it, do we have any other areas with a similar issue where we've got a 70-foot transmission pole, like right behind some houses, or is that just a one-time situation, or do we know?
I think this is the only one that I'm aware of that's close to residential structures, but I'll be able to give more information on that next month.
Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, I'm just it'd be good if you're going to look at the issue, see if, the issue is repeating itself behind other people's houses. I'm sure no one wants a 70-foot pole behind their house, so we'll just take a look at it, right?
Right. The Randalls and Panther Creek, that's my backyard. And I can't wait to see how this unfolds, because the same thing happened to me, but that's a cell tower. That's not Woodlands Water. But if you guys make this 70-foot pole look like a tree, I've got something to pursue with Dr. Shelley Sekula Gibbs's board. Thank you.
Right. Sure. Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Jim. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to item 18. Receive staff update on the SGRA application for additional funding and engineering on Spring Creek, and separate application for construction funding assistance on modifications to Bear Branch, Panther Branch.
Ron, do you have any update for the Spring Creek?
No, sir. We don't have any updates.
And as far as the Bear Branch, I reported, I think, last meeting that we had all of the memorandums of understanding and the affidavits of no objection that we needed. And boy, did I misspeak. The Sandy Center River Authority had not acted on theirs. So that is on their agenda this month. And then that will wrap up all of the entities that we needed to get those two items from.
Okay, good. All right, thank you all. Let's move on then to item 19, discuss and consider ideas for improving Woodlands water operational efficiency. Could there be any way we could be any more efficient? Does anybody have any ideas? Okay. I guess not. Moving on, item number 20, discuss any matters for placement on future agenda. Do we have anything we'd like to make sure we have on the next month's Woodlands water agenda we need to bring up?
This is Trustee Custer. This may be out of order because it's related to a previous item, but I have a question on the Tin Man discussion.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, whether or not that gap that, Chris, I think you articulated the $9,000 gap or so relative to the original estimate. Was that overage included in the in what you had previously approved as a board here, or is there a requirement that that be acted on and approved? For that overage?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact form of the motion. I thought it was just move forward with getting the engineering work done. We'd have to go back to the minutes.
Yeah, the recollection that I have, and we could double check, was that that was an estimate that was presented, and the River Authority was given direction to move forward. And I think it was their intent to report back, you know, any adjustments in that estimate, but not to delay or postpone moving forward with that engineering work.
That's consistent with what I was thinking. So I think what we approved was moving forward with having the engineering work done. So I think we've effectively handed the ball off to San Jacinto River Authority at this point. I'm not sure there's anything we really need to do or ratify.
One comment, Eric, this is Kyle Mays. I think it would be good to consider for future decisions like this. Maybe we set some standards. If we vote on something and then the price is a certain percentage above the estimate, then maybe we have to reapprove it. Maybe set some limits like that for going forward at some point.
And this is Trustee Custer. I would agree with that. It seems like not only the budget changed, but the scope a little bit in terms of an additional area of work to size Tin Man based on that fan. So it sounds like a couple things changed, which we should learn from for future. Yes.
This is Trustee Martin. I'm also looking at a schedule that on the Tin Man that now slides all the way to, looks like, between January and February of 22, just for the engineering phase. So that's a year to completion from now. And I don't recall the original schedule, but it is a shift to the right, no question.
It wasn't that long, that's for sure. Well, I mean, what do we want to do about it? I'm not sure there's anything we can do. I mean, it's kind of out of our hands at this point.
Well, it's Trustee Custer.
Trustee Martin.
Paul,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
All right, so it seems to me that this discussion of the Tin Man and odor issues ties into the issue that we've been working on for several months now to talk about relocation and consolidation of wastewater treatment plants. And to the extent that we can get our targets lined up correctly, then I think we can go out for an RFQ if the board approves, and perhaps we can get an answer to that consolidation study just about the time that this engineering is completed on this Tin Man. So, you know, if it makes sense to consolidate, the actual construction of this may then be either moot or maybe subject to a further review at that point. Just a thought.
Any other discussion on the issue? Do we want to add an agenda item concerning the Tin Man? Do we think that's necessary? Can I get Jim or Brian to chime in on that?
And we're happy to add that to your agenda. So if there's a desire to take any action, you can do that.
So here's my concern. You know, our Lakeside Cove residents, I thought, were very happy that we were moving forward with the engineering, and I think the intent was to go ahead and move forward with it. And I don't think it's unreasonable, you know, with what we do, that, oh, big surprise, you know, it's going to cost a little more than they said. I don't think that should derail the train. I think, you know, we approved it as a board, San Jacinto River Authority has taken the ball and they're running with it. I would prefer not to rehash anything we've already made decisions on. I'm not opposed to having additional discussions and having another agenda item, but I don't really want to go backwards. Our residents are depending on what we've already committed to do. So that's my concern. Does anybody have a comment?
I agree with you, but I was hopeful we could get a updated schedule from SJRA on the project.
Concerning the 10-man?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Maybe add that as an agenda item?
Yeah, and this is Trustee Custer, just to follow on my question.
Yes.
And I'm with you, President Hurd, there that we don't want to go backwards. There's a commitment made by this board, but with respect to that adder, that 69K adder, it seems to me is being made to avoid or sizing properly.
Mm-hmm.
And the data I'd like to hear is just the risk of being wrong. Is there an oversize? What other options did you consider as opposed to adding that fan test? And is there anything you can do just to be efficient? I expect you to do that normal course, but specifically when you're coming in 50% over budget,
right?
I think it's reasonable to ask the pros cons for that fan test.
Well, I think that narrowed scope, I think, makes sense. Does anybody have any objection to us discussing that? Maybe Chris, can you get with us on that at our next meeting? We'll put an official agenda item to discuss that issue and the time frame.
This is Ron. Could I maybe answer some questions that would maybe solve all this? In answer to your question on the fan test and why it's needed, the original design that we anticipated doing was the fan out there now is a 6,000 SCFM fan. We assume that fan would be adequate, but we also have to remember that we have another neighborhood in North Millbend that 10-man was built originally in the first place. And so we want to make sure that we were, like Chris said, we were pulling the right amount of flow of air through that system to be working. Now, we could have gone in and designed this facility using 6,000. We could say, well, let's make sure it's 12,000. And so we could be overly conservative and spend more money on buying bigger pieces of equipment that, as Chris said, may not be what you need, and it may be spending too much money on that. So we felt it was more, remember, this is a $1.3 to $1.5 million project. And so we felt it was more prudent to spend the extra $50,000 on this fan test and make sure that we understand. And this fan test is going to look anywhere from 6,000 to 20,000 SCFM. We will be able to size the fan that's needed to pull a vacuum through this system. And we felt it was more prudent to spend that extra money up front than to either oversize or undersize a design that costs $1.5 million that may overwork or underwork. So that was the reason for the cost. Regarding the schedule does shift all the way out into it completes in December, and you would go to our board in January of next year for our construction contract. What we included was the design is only taken about 9 months or about 8 months. The rest of the time is going through the process of, okay, I got a final design. Now I have to go through the procurement process of securing a contractor, putting it out on the streets for bids, evaluating those bids, bringing it to you to make sure that you are agreement with what we want to do, and then take it to our board. That process, after the design is done, takes about 4 months. And so we're actually going to be through with the design back in the September range, or about September range. But it takes that long to go through the procurement process. So we will have the final design done. And then the other piece, so we went from a 6-month design basically to a 9-month design. Part of the reason it went from 6 to 9 is to add this fan test to make sure that we have the equipment properly sized. So that's the explanation.
Ron, this is Trustee Lux. I'd like to ask you, I know that you've used construction manager at risk in building the treatment plant, the water treatment plant?
Yep.
Is this project going to be conventional design, bid, build?
That's one of the things that we're going to be looking at through this design process. What is the most efficient, effective way to deliver the project? Is it to the traditional way of hiring a general contractor and having that contractor buy all the equipment and then install it is probably the most conservative, takes the longest time, and probably the most expensive. What we're going to be looking for is are there alternative ways like vendor, supply, and installed. We're also looking for a system that has one source of responsibility. So all of those procurement and implementation options will be looked at during the final design.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, so I think that I would like to add an agenda item just to discuss the 10-man and where we're at and what we're going to do, and just to circle up on it. Okay.
So I have a question for y'all. This is on our board's agenda for the 28th of January. Okay. If I delay that and pull it off of the agenda and we wait till this meeting in February, then I won't be able to take this to our board until February, if not March. Would it be acceptable for y'all if we go ahead and bring this to our board and ask them to approve it on the condition that the trustees approve of it in February? And then if they don't approve it, then it just goes away.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay.
I mean, I see this as just part of a project that we approved, and maybe it'll make it better in more ways than one. But I think there's a lot of interest on the board. Certainly there is in the community that we get it right. So let's add an agenda item, Jim and Brian, on that issue. Okay.
Thank you.
And that's all, I think, unless there's any other items we want to add to the agenda. Okay. No more items. I will now adjourn the meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.